the governance roles. So you
Oh,
have
goodness.
right? Because we talked about your entrepreneurial journey,
Yeah.
alternative financial financing for SMEs that had three characteristics. And then you oftentimes served on the board of directors or as a non-executive director. And what would be the major differences between an independent director position in a corporate board in the United States, be it public or private, versus what you experienced in the international markets? Because it's very
Yeah,
different.
there's big difference. There's some very, very fundamental differences. And let me just clarify, the 50 companies, some of those were, I was, we were the investor and I was, and as an investor, you have a board seat, okay? So
Yeah.
some of them were that, some of them were again, NEDs, okay? But sort of the biggest difference, that's sort of like the big thing is that in the States, and again, it's changing somewhat, okay? But sort of in the developed world, like in US, Canada, to some extent, probably even more so in Europe, the board, yeah, they had governance responsibilities and helping develop strategy. But the boards were intended or desired not to be what we call supportive or had any fingers in operations or help support operations, okay?
The nose
In
in,
the,
fingers out.
yeah, in the emerging world, founders, even, well, I wouldn't say state-owned enterprise, but founders of small companies, mid-sized companies, even companies that are doing like $100 million in revenue, okay? They wanted board directors who were going to really make a contribution. And we had KPIs,
Yes.
which I don't think most boards have KPIs for their board members. Unless, and maybe I'm mistaken, okay?
Mhm.
So for example, in several companies, we established a board, we established, policies and procedures, governance,
Mhm.
ethic requirements, things that are sort of standard in boards. And then board members, depending on what their expertise was, et cetera, would be seconded to either the CFO, the chief operating officer, the chief sort of business development person in these companies to help them grow in some particular way. So let me give you two examples. So one, I was on the board of a Russian bank.
Okay.
For a long time, it had been a pocket bank of a construction company. All
Okay.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And the founders of both the construction company and the bank, during sort of, when sort of the Russian market opened up for, like 20 years or so, okay. There's tremendous growth. I mean, the economy has grown like 7, 8, 9% per year. I mean, products were literally flying off the shelves,
Yes,
okay?
I remember that period.
So the bank wanted to create an SME lending program.
Uh-huh.
And so I worked with both the person who was appointed, sort of like, the head of SME lending, their business development person, their CFO. We created, their whole SME lending program, the policies and procedures, risk management, auditing, how we were going to go about attracting clients, criteria to evaluate clients, blah, blah, blah. We
Mm-hmm.
put that together and we implemented it, okay? Initially and it was based in Moscow, so we were implementing first initially in what we call sort of the Moscow Oblast or the Moscow region, which, was a population of like about, I don't know, 12, 13 million people, okay?
Right.
And then we started to expand it to, nearby regions and then, later on into, what we call Siberia and then sort of north and south parts of Russia. And it was a big success. And my brief was, we were working, I was working like 60 days a year working with this company, okay? You don't typically see that in US companies,
No,
okay?
it's very operational, very
Yeah,
strategic, right?
yeah. And another company was a beverage company in the tea and coffee business. They have been around for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. But what's interesting is they were selling predominantly to the Russian word would be babushkas or dadushkas, which is grandfathers and grandmothers, okay? Their product line was very, very sort of stale, okay? And I was appointed because the company wanted to grow and develop, and they raised money from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which was set up by the G7 countries, okay?
Yep.
And Tata Global, Tata Beverages, which is part of Tata, the big Indian company.
India.
Tata Global is based in London. And they wanted an independent director in case, because there were 3 directors on the Russian side, 3 directors on the Tata side. And they wanted independent in case there was any conflict or et cetera, blah, 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 okay? And so, I was appointed as an NED. We looked at the product line and said, hey, look, the economy is really growing. I mean, now there are Starbucks clones in Russia. And they are attracting young guys and women to hang out and have coffee and tea and get acquainted and, meet partners and have fun with their buddies and their girlfriends and blah, blah, blah. And we're not in this segment at all. We don't even serve these folks, okay?
Because they're going to grandmothers or granddads, right?
Yeah, and all their coffee was all ground coffee. And their tea was all sort of, black tea or green tea, okay? 2 flavors, that was it. So we revamped the whole product line, all the packaging, started to develop again, we didn't really call it that time social media, but started to communicate through, again, Russian clones of Facebook, the Russian clone of Google, other ones were propping up, there are other things of doing it. It started to appeal to them, okay? Not for our products in those outlets, those retail outlets, but in supermarkets, okay? And in, stores and stuff. And oh my gosh, sales increased over about a 3-year period from 45 million to over 80 million. Profits from like 2 million to 8 million and distributed, 20 million in dividends. It was a cool gig. And again, I was working with what we call the commercial director. Now they would call me like the chief marketing officer, but the commercial director, okay? The production people, we were having to buy, beans from, typically at that time, the beans were coming from Africa. And we diversified in terms of, getting beans from, Southeast Asia and Latin America, a bunch of other places, and advertised with different flavor profiles. And it was a cool gig. I enjoyed it. But again, the brief for me as an independent director was, hey, Tom, we really want you to help us, develop, some more robust product lines. And in the bank, going back to that, not only in terms of developing the SME lending program, but being the interface between raising capital from international investors, and this is a Russian entity. And it was a Russian entity, but we also created all the investments flowed through an entity in Cyprus, because there was a dual taxation treaty between Russia and Cyprus.
Fantastic. Exciting.